Welcome to episode 3 of the Mental Dietitian podcast. Today, my guest was Mitch Vickridge. He's the co-founder of Cacao Collective. He is a trauma coach. He's a peak performance coach. And we had an amazing conversation. Listen to this one. We talk about trauma. We talk about cacao. We talk about how to regulate your nervous system. We talk about his healing of himself, the current medical system, his thoughts on it. We talked about a lot of different things, and it's an amazing conversation. Really, really looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say about this one. And here it is. Well, welcome to the show, Mr. Mitchell Vickridge. I'm excited to have you, man. You are all the way over in Western Australia right now. What's it like there?
I was going to say we're both in two of probably the worst countries to live in right now in terms of draconian nightmares.
Somebody probably just turned it on, even though nobody's listening to this right now. Somebody will listen to that and be like, they're gonna do this. Maybe. I want to talk about a bunch of different stuff today. I want to talk about healing yourself so you can heal other people around you. I want to talk about the business you built and how I've noticed it just skyrocketed. And what I've seen, it has a very loyal fan base, a very loyal subscriber base, a very loyal customer base. And what else do I want to talk about? I want to talk about relationships. I want to talk about death. I want to talk about your own death and facing that. I want to talk about plant medicines. I want to talk about what that can do. I want to talk about what you've learned the last 2 years. I want to talk about a bunch of different things. So I'm excited, man. I don't really know where to start, but I mean, it's summertime in Australia. It's winter time here. It was -30 at Christmas time when I went to a place called Kelowna. Ooh. -30. So, I mean, ouch. It was freezing. And it was like 44 degrees in Perth, I think, around the same time. So, man, I kind of miss the sun.
43, so that's 70 plus degrees. That's Celsius, right? -30 Celsius.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that kind of cold?
Perisher, I think, got down to like -15. That's the eastern states of Australia. That was pretty cold, but like not horrible, not Canada cold.
Yeah, Canada's pretty wild, man. Like in Edmonton, which is in Alberta, the other day it was -55 before wind chill, which means if you had this is a cup of tea, if you threw it out, it would like vaporize, it disappears. It's crazy. If you just go outside and do like this.
Seen those videos, yeah.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like I wanted to talk about first. I want to talk about your business, because obviously we were a little bit delayed. You had a business call. Obviously, it's going well. Has it got to the point where I don't think you have a job. I don't think you've had a job for quite some time. Like, tell me about that. Tell me about the journey of Cacao Collective. I'm a customer. It's great. I found, even though it takes a while to ship from Australia, it's cheaper than other places I've got it. It's better quality. It's just better done. I love the brand you're creating. I love the Instagram. I love you have the altered states things that you've been doing. It's all linked together. It's freaking cool. So, I mean, tell me about that, because it's interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm still coaching in the capacity that I have with the Rolling Cacao Collective, and I'm probably in the state where I can, and I wake up at 5:30 and I can get to bed at 10 o'clock. Like, even though I take my breaks, I can work at a high capacity. So I'm still coaching in the holistic field and doing a lot of regenerative work, trauma work, high performance work. So that's still on the side. But with Cacao Collective, this year is really for us about expanding as an entity with people, with literally the collective, because the bigger it gets, the smaller we get, And Yazzie and I started this as it's very cliche, in the garage. And actually, even before that step, it was, we love this. We want our friends and family to kind of share in with us. I'd been drinking cacao prior. I've been attending a few ceremonies. I've been doing my inner work. And we just honestly wanted to share it. It was nothing really like super spiritual, or nothing that was like a call from the heavens. It was nothing like that at all. It was just literally, we love this product. We know a lot of people love it when they have it. People are looking for something that's going to improve their mood, support their energy without having those huge stimulant spikes from, say, caffeine and coffee. And it just tastes amazing. The aromatic profile on the cacao that we found, and the people that we got involved with, and the farms that were harvesting, the chain from A to Z ticked all the boxes for us and felt really, really good and really integral to actually start sharing it, because chocolate does have a very dark side. And that was just a small scale operation. And then it just immediately blew up, and people just said, we love it and we want to, be a part of it. Do you have more? And we're like, shit, we just sold out. So we're going to do this. And one thing led to another. We were operating full time out of the garage. Again, very cliche. And then it just got to the point where we kind of looked at each other and we went, there's something here. And we keep getting pulled back into it. So there's only two options. There's no in between now. There's no flakiness. It's either we do this or we don't. And it was at that point we said, we're doing this. And so we jumped in, we started doing bigger orders. We put funding into it from ourselves. We self-funded. We went to a 3PL facility because we needed that we were working, literally doing day and night orders in the garage. So we just couldn't keep up. And again, it was just one thing led to another, and it led to the other by the fact that people kept engaging and people kept asking and people kept wanting, and they just kept saying, this is such an amazing cacao. And, we really love the branding. We love the message and what we're about. And, I'm a natural giver. Like I'm a born giver. I love giving and I love receiving, but I love to give in any capacity I have from a place of overflow. And we really wanted to get into this too. My big intention was to ultimately be able to give back to the Mesoamerican regions in whatever capacity, whether that's through financial capacity or that's through some elbow grease. I was supposed to go to Peru last year, but Bill Gates fucked that up. So fuck you. So, we're supporting villages in Bali at the moment because Peru is very, very hard to get to with cooperatives and the language barriers and all that. So we support our farmers the best we can. We have a 1 bag, 1 meal initiative where for every bag that someone purchases, we will donate a meal. And it's really more than a meal because it's just basically food that will supply multiple meals. So this year for us, with We're At The Business, is about expansion again and really becoming nationally recognized as, making cacao accessible to the everyday Australian. And I think that's why the brand has really grown and why this entity and this collective has really grown, because when I got into cacao, even though I'm like, I'm pretty spiritual and kooky at some level, but I'm also quite grounded in, and I'm like, I'm human, And I feel like a lot of the messaging has been lost with cacao in not so much taking it too seriously, but definitely having that spiritual component where people who haven't been introduced to it prior think they have to be something in order to consume it.
Yeah.
I literally had an email the other day and someone's like, it was something basically like, am I capable of having cacao? And I just thought, what fucking world are we living in where you have to ask someone whether you can consume cacao?
This is how you do it. Yeah.
In the mouth. Like, yeah. So we also had a couple of emails recently of also people saying like, thank you for making it so accessible. And that was the price too. We're not here to make a quick buck. Our bank account's still reading negative. 2 years later, I haven't taken a paycheck, $1 single dollar. So we're definitely not in this for, we're definitely in this for success. We're definitely in this to grow this company and run it as a company. But I think the intention, and it's becoming clearer and clearer each year, that we're just simply loving sharing something that in this world of fucking chaos, excuse my French, and uncertainty and overwhelm, sometimes just sitting down with a cup of chocolate and clearing your mind and clearing the mental real estate is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. And bringing back a level of presence. And we literally just let people have cacao the way that they want to have cacao. If that's in a deep ceremony or breath work or ecstatic dance or just reading a book or having an intimate moment with their partner or having a tough conversation, we really feel like this brand is about letting you decide how you want to utilize and work with cacao.
That's very true. So, yeah. Man. Very true. I want to piggyback on what you said, and people do that with a lot of different things. Cacao, it's like you said, like some people think, oh, well, am I spiritually awakened enough to have cacao? It's just like, man, like they think it's like going and doing ayahuasca or something, or do you have to be that certain kind of person with the baggy pants and to have your chakras aligned before you make that cup of cacao. It's just, I used to have it every morning, and I would sit there on the couch, and it'd be like before the sun would rise, and I would sit there and I would just have it, and I could be present. And I'm a very, this is me all the time. And I'm in sales. I sell cars over the phone. So I'm very high pressure. I'm very, like, there's a lot going on in my head all the time. I'm constantly thinking about the future. I'm constantly thinking about deals and all this kind of stuff. And my life will just pass me by if I just live in that space. So when I had that, when I have cacao, it kind of brings me back to being present. I'm like, this is nice. Like I'm sitting on the couch, the sun is rising. I'm happy because I'm here. That's what I got out of it. I mean, I don't think
That's
I've
beautiful.
I've never done a cacao ceremony.
Right?
Exactly what you said.
And look, and I'll even say, like, I love a lot of there is a sacred element to it. This is the thing. Like there is a reverence and a beautiful sacredness to cacao and the history of cacao.
Yeah.
And the way that matter and spirit do come to this convergent point, and there's so much beauty in both. And I've had so many amazing, beautiful experiences with cacao and combining that, say, with dance or breath or whatever. I mean, one of my first ceremonies, or so I was about my third or fourth, was actually with Tim Morrison. He's a well-known ceremonialist here in Australia. And that was very sacred, it was very, very tender and very, very intimate. So I don't want to downplay cacao either. Like there is room for everything here. There's room for spirituality. There's room for sacredness and tenderness. And there's also room for having presence where you get to sit on a porch and watch the sunrise. Yeah. And I think that's where the brand is really becoming so inclusive. And I think it's the way in which we're kind of like just toning down the spiritual community and kind of removing ourselves from hyper spirituality, because we're here to be human beings. And we already are spiritual, you know what I mean? Like it's our nature. You wouldn't wake up one day and go, or like a tree wouldn't wake up one day and go, I'm going to try to be a tree today. It's like, it just is. Why does it need to burn itself? It just is, it's like we're human and we are already spiritual. So trying to be spiritual almost seems like a misnomer and a bit of a misdirection. And I think when it comes back to hearing yourself speak about just simple presence, and coming out of the mind, a lot of this mental real estate and neurotic thinking and overthinking, and actually come back to your body and your senses and the present moment. That's really where it starts. And we trust that people then can have their own experience. We don't need to control or have it a certain way. And the reason I think I'm voicing all this is because, we're kind of reflecting back on the question, which was, where does it start and where is it going? And I feel like where it's going is, to more homes where it's accessible, and to more people who can have these moments, because people are literally living in fear. And I'm not saying cacao's going to solve all your problems and pay all your bills, but they're living in fear. There's so much uncertainty, and we're so locked in the mind and this fear-based thinking. So people are really disconnected from their bodies. They really are disconnected from their senses, and cacao is just a beautiful way to bring that simplicity back.
Man, totally. I agree with you 100%. And I love how that you want to make it accessible to more people. And that simple thing could be the gateway for a lot of people to want to learn how to heal themselves. And that's a really big thing. I think I have a friend, Marcus, and wait till you hear the podcast I have with him. You and him would have a crazy conversation. Like he's probably like, he's one of my spiritual mentors, like one of my spiritual kind of, he's been through some shit, let me tell you that, like some serious trauma, like crazy shit. And he was talking about like plant medicines and things like that. He's like, a lot of people think that is the healing. It's not. It's just a shovel to dig up your shit, and you have to integrate what you dig up. But a lot of people bounce from thing to thing to thing. Okay, I did some LSD. Okay, cool. Check that off the box. Cool. I want to go do some ayahuasca. Done. Cool. San Pedro. Boom. Done that. And it's like a gotta catch them all Pokemon thing. And then they can go too far down that spiritual thing where they're so enlightened, and then they become judgmental around people that haven't done that. And you're not as awakened as me. And I've seen a lot of people like that. And like you said, it's just like a tree is a tree, a bird is a bird. They just do bird things and tree things. And you're a human and you can just do human things. You don't have to try. You should be, it's already there. It's like, you don't have to find it. It's already there, but you just have to maybe discover it because you forgot about it or you lost it somewhere along the way. So, I mean, that's something that he said to me the other day. I was like, holy shit. A lot of people think that they, for example, do a ceremony and there could be some breath work, or they think they need the breath work. They need the plant medicine, or they need the cacao. And it's just like, no, it's a tool, it's a gateway, it's a way of kind of maybe tapping into that. And it's cool that you want to make that accessible to all Australians. And I'm over in Canada, man. Like I have people that I've referred to buy it over here. So I mean, it won't just be Australia. You'll be surprised. Who knows where it'll be by the end of the year? Who fucking knows, man? Like
we got some really exciting things happening. And I love that you kind of mentioned it's almost like, yeah, cacao is the gateway drug to like other things that you can do for healing. I love what you said. And look, really, that's again the spiritual ego. And you know, awareness of our own ego is like super important on this journey too, because the way that I remember Alan Watts describing it, you know, your ego is like the guy that pickpockets your watch and sells it back to you without you knowing. So it's like when you do discover that, okay, you know, I am one with the universe and I'm an aspect of God and I'm part of the fabric and structure of existence itself. And it's all this beautiful now moment. When you have that level of enlightenment and that knowledge, you either become, you know, I think it's the Bodhidharma, where you go off to the mountains of the Himalayas and you sit and you meditate for 24 hours a day and literally bliss. And you probably meditate at such a frequency that you do lift the vibration of the world and you're a silent hero. And then there's also the Bodhisattva, which comes back down the mountain and goes, okay, I get the secret. I've finally woken up. I understand, but now I have to ground myself back in human form and speak human language and do human things in a human capacity in the vibration of love, which is all things, and not in separateness, which again is where the ego comes into play. Well, I've done more ayahuasca than you, and I've, you know, and we've all been there. Like we've definitely all been there. We've all had the experience where we've either pedestaled someone and minimized ourselves, or put them in a pit and pedestaled ourselves and look down on them. So we look up or look down. And that's the separation. And it's like when you can continually come back to presence or your heart or truth or what human beings really crave, which is oneness and connection and love and all these things. Like that's where it's at. And that's where the healing is at, returning to wholeness and wholesomeness. And cacao almost does represent that, right? Because it's a heart medicine. It's pharmacokinetics and its physiological properties, even the medical literature, are all purely, well, mostly based around the heart. And there's also an expression I heard from one of my cacao mentors, and that was, you know, love is bittersweet. Love isn't like, you know, I love you and rainbows and unicorn farts. Love is like truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. You can be slapped with the truth and you can be slapped with love. And it's interesting that cacao is also bitter in nature.
It is, yeah.
So it's like love is bittersweet. And yeah, there's some real like deep wisdom within that I think, again, when people go on this journey and work with cacao and do their self-healing and use it as a beautiful support tool, you unlock and you unfold and you really open yourself to yourself. And that's a beautiful journey.
When did that journey start for you? Because I remember when we were younger, I didn't really know you very well, but you were kind of this well-known dude within the Perth bodybuilding scene where you're just jacked. I remember seeing you at music festival. I was like, Mitch Vickridge is fucking yoked. Like, look at this dude, just absolutely yoked. At Stereosonic, just watching W&W. Just, I still love that music. And before I let you answer, that music is actually the experiences that I had at certain music festivals with my friends was almost spiritual to a sense. Like when you get to that point with MDMA and there's some kind of female vocalist with trance and it's just like, everything's just kind of like, and you're like, whoa. And then you actually do ceremonies and you're like, oh shit, that was that. Whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, the infinite intelligence. It's just kind of like everything is like in synchronicity.
Well, it's that convergent point where you do dissolve the ego, the individual ego aspect. There's no differentiation between you and the external world. You literally become one with the total energy system. Your heartbeat runs on the same energy as the star, the sunshine.
Yeah.
You close the gap between your ego, personality, personal identity, whatever you want to call it, and reality. And that's the oneness. And that's enlightenment. That's presence. That's the now. And that's where, you know, humanity hopefully starts walking towards, which I think we are at just a slow snail pace. But we'll get there.
Doing our best.
To answer your question, they're doing our best for sure. To answer your question, the first thing that's coming to my mind is this YouTube video I saw at 17 years old of Joe Rogan when like YouTube had just 17 is when I graduated. So yeah, YouTube was like 2 years old. And Joe Rogan was talking about DMT. And it was the first time I'd heard someone speak that resonated with the level of curiosity that I had always as a child and as a teenager growing up about there is something beyond this reality that I just can't quite put my finger on, but I know there's something more.
Yeah.
And as soon as he started talking about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, for anyone that's listening that doesn't really know, it's known as the spirit molecule. We do produce it naturally, and it's probably arguably the most psychedelic substance on the planet. It's found in nature everywhere, acacia bark trees, and here in Australia, a lot of woodland forests and grasses and all that kind of stuff. So it took me like 6 weeks to obviously find DMT, smoked it at like 17 or 18 with a buddy. And that blasted me out of my body. And I explain it like this: if your entire life you came down your mother's vaginal canal, and at the moment of conception, a doctor put VR goggles on your eyes, and you grew up for your entire life with VR goggles on. If one day you were to knock those off, that's really what DMT does. You get to see reality almost as it is, not so much with the human senses, but reality as this now moment, this mystical experience, the one that I think is actually deeply embedded into the human spirit when we fall asleep. And I want to tell you a story about falling asleep through children. This is all going to be linked, by the way. But yeah, that was really the first thing that opened my eyes, or really opened my first eye. I call it the first one because you only need one, and these ones you need two because it's so fucking blind. and once my first eye, or my third eye, whatever we call it, my pineal gland was opened, and I could see things beyond the veil. It is a bit like being in a room and having a trampoline. All of a sudden you can jump and there's no roof, and you realize there's just so much beyond what we're told to think, be, do, say, act, behave, and be a part of society. And so that was really, the opening. That was really the the key to unlock Pandora's box, to go down this rabbit hole of consciousness and being. And I went through that whole spiritual ego, and I've done mushrooms, and it's hilarious, but all roads lead to Rome. And I think once you go through that maturation process, you like a real maturing of self, then you become more grounded, and you realize, no, I am here to be human. I'm not here to live my life in this flaky, spiritual, like woo-woo space. Here, present, grounded, and in your body and in your mind. So, I would say, Joe Rogan. Thanks, brother.
He's always like,
just real quick with this story. I'll just tell it real quick. I was listening to one of my other mentors in the health field, and he was talking about the story of the nature of falling asleep as human beings, because it's like we come into this earth as a spirit, and this star seed and this child, and we're born, and then we kind of go through this indoctrination system of schooling and get a job and play it safe, and just we become, soulless zombies until we wake up. And he was telling the story of a mother who had two children. One was a bub and one was a small child. She must have been like 5 or 6. And one night she put the baby down in the crib, and then the daughter was around and just said, Mummy, can I go say goodnight to, we'll call it Zach, whatever the name was. And she goes, yeah, sure, no worries, whatever. So this sister of this other baby goes to the room, and the door's open. The mother kind of peeks in and is overhearing the conversation. And this 5-year-old goes, baby, can you tell me about God again? Because I think I'm about to go to sleep and forget.
Holy shit. Your
5-year-old.
The mum's at the door like,
can you tell me about God again? And I hear this all the time with parents, say their children are their greatest teacher because they're untainted. They're so present. Yeah. We know they're present. And, like examples that come across is like, when a child is just, you can see they're so present with whatever they're doing, dancing, playing with toys are in there. It's this wonder. And then maybe they're dancing, right? And then you're at this like home party, and then you go, oh, Joey, that's an amazing dance. Can you show daddy now, or show grandpa? And then he does it again, but it's not quite the same because now he's performing. He's not present. And I feel like children are a real representation of that, because how many of us, once we get out of high school, we go into the quote unquote real world, and we're out here performing. We're always obsessing about what we're thinking, what we're saying, how we look, is it right, looking for people's approval, external validation. And we lose the presence process, we lose our presence practice, and we become so disconnected from our hearts. And therefore we just live in our minds. We become these autonomous robots that think we just consistently have to perform and go and do. And then we forget the being. We forget that we are the one that we love, the love we seek, the approval we seek, the everything. And that is the journey back home, really.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that story. But again, to answer your question, thank you, Joe Rogan. Dr. Joe Rogan, apparently lately.
Oh man, holy shit. I love how you probably saw that graph of all like how many millions of people listen to per episode. It's like 11 million. Yeah. It's just hilarious. It's just like, I trust a lot of the stuff he says and a lot of the stuff that some of his guests say. Don't get me wrong, I don't agree with everything that his guests say, because
Sure, discernment. Yeah.
Of course not. But like, what I like about him is he just tells the truth. Like he tells the truth about how he overcame COVID, for example. And he's just like, he talks about facts about things like ivermectin and things like that. And I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail about it. If you want to learn about it, listen to his podcast. I'm not super educated. You're probably way more educated than me, but it's just interesting. It's like,
go down the rabbit hole for sure.
4 billion times it's ever been administered, and then they have 30 complications. That's something that he said. He's like, here's the study, here's the proof, go look it up for yourself. It's not a horse dewormer. And it's just there's so much bullshit in the world right now, and it is very sad. And like, for example, in Canada right now, all the gyms are closed during New Year's. Gyms are closed completely till January 18th, and they're going to reassess. And there's some gyms that are staying open, and they're getting like shutting down their businesses, things like that. And it can make somebody feel hopeless. And I think that a lot of the world is maybe feeling hopeless lately. And what I want to maybe ask a question of your perspective on it. If somebody's feeling hopeless and feeling like the mental health issues that this pandemic has maybe brought, like, what do you think that they can do as an individual level to start, like, or really it comes down to controlling your own nervous system, right? It comes down to what we feed our minds and who we hang out with, things like that. But I mean, we've kind of actually already spoke about it, having some presence, having some cacao, maybe just being in the moment with yourself. But what would you speak to that? Like, what's your perspective on that as an individual?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to probably shoot like a spider web just multiple ways. Because that's the thing. I don't think there's one thing. I think
no, there's not.
Very cynical to think, it's just this one thing. First of all, I think it's acknowledging the way you feel. Most people don't have actually trouble feeling their feelings. Most people are struggling with the resistance of the feelings. They're holding on. They're in that resistance where they're swimming upstream. So that would be the first thing, is like, take a big deep breath and ask yourself, where am I holding on to the old reality that I just kind of wish and is still in this distorted fantasy that I hope just blows over. And it's like, this is where, again, love can be bittersweet. It's not.
Yeah.
The old world is gone. Just like when you're 6 years old, 7 years old, and it's like you outgrow toys, there's a little bit of that period where you're like, oh, but I want to go back to my toys. And it's like, no, you're growing up. Now it's like boys in makeup or BMX bikes or whatever it is, We're always growing, we're always moving. The universe is not static. There's always entropy, there's always movement, and there's always chaos to order. There's always that dual thing. So it's like, right now, this could be seen as the worst thing ever, the most inhumane crime against humanity, and it is all true, all valid. But there's no one experience in life. It's like having yin without yang and positive without negative. So there's also the other side. And what I would inquire people to start doing is to explore the undiscovered benefits, upsides, and ways in which this is now providing opportunity for a new world and a new reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're in resistance and you're holding on to what was and wishing that it could become back and feeling more and more pain because the distance between where it was and where it is now and how these new things keep coming in, the greater the pain and suffering. So there's probably elements of surrender, trust, feeling your goddamn feelings, absolutely. Please feel them. And I know there's a lot of hopelessness and powerlessness and overwhelm, and especially the fear, because that's really how they control people. It's how these motherfuckers want to control the entire human race. It's through fear. You send them out of their governance from the front of their brain, this powerful cortex, and you send them right back into the limbic brain, which is hyper reactive and very suggestible. Because now you've gone down, where human potential is in this like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and this higher self-actualization and socialization and bonding and community, right down to the basic needs. Take away their jobs, shut their small business, well, they're going to worry about food, they're going to worry about shelter and paying their bills and all the lower vibrational, if you want to call it that, things that human beings need to do before they can then, okay, now we can interact, and my nervous system feels safe, and I move into what's called ventral vagal state as opposed to dorsal vagal, or simply fight flight. And you literally have people that are in that dorsal vagal freeze, they're immobile, or their life is chronic 24/7 fight flight.
Yeah, I've seen it. I felt it at times myself.
For sure. So second to that is learning how to breathe. If the human population, if every single human being on this planet knew how to breathe, this clown show would be over in a fucking minute, because no one would tolerate this. Anyone with any kind of governance would really feel their intuition, go, something is wrong in my gut. We call that gut feelings. It's really your intuition. It's your knowingness beyond thought. Really, the mind is of creation. The mind is a conditioned instrument. That's why we speak English and not Chinese. We've been conditioned to grow up in English environments, right? So that's why there's a lot of suffering and resistance between what people know, like this is fucking wrong, but X, insert the blank. And they're also then in resistance to themselves. They've got cognitive dissonance, or they've got moral dissonance, or whatever they're actually battling. So I feel like some of the biggest battles people are going through right now is not because Bill Gates is evil. Evil has always existed. It's just that now we have social media and we have more access to media than ever. So now it's just been highlighted. But corruption and evil and backstabbing and power and narcissism and abuse have always been a part of the human condition.
Yep.
What you would call maybe the shadow side, the dark side, the negative forces. But this is the thing too, when you have magnetism and you got this beautiful dance between the two poles, that's when you work out the secret, you become enlightened. Oh my God, it's all the same thing. The thing is now is raising consciousness. And I mean this quite literally, not in a pseudo spiritual way. It's like, so too as you raise the ceiling, you raise the floor. So as people wake up to themselves, they become more self-accountable. They become more governed by their cortex and not their limbic brain. So they become more centered and present and focused. Then they can start to take action. And that can be in the smallest and largest ways, because there might be people that are governed who are in politics that can make great change. But it might also be a 64-year-old nan who now decides that she wants to get healthy and lose 15 kilos because she's got high blood pressure from all the stress. I don't know. I'm just making an example.
Yep.
But every single human being on this planet has some level of choice. And it's all choice. It's all choice. We get to choose. However, we become blinded by that choice when we feel trapped, when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel like we've been injected with 3 cc's of fear. Injected with the fear from CNN and MSNBC and all these bullshit, media stations that are colluding with pharma and government and yada, yada. We get all that. So yeah, to really answer your question and for the listeners, it'd be breathe and regulate, because nothing I say is going to help and hit the actual cortex if we're in fight, flight and freeze. So learning how to breathe deeply through the nose and just actually opening up your diaphragm and your rib cage so you can have those. I call deep breaths, even a single deep breath, like a hug for your nervous system.
It is.
So many deep breaths are many deep hugs. The more hugs you want for your nervous system, the more breaths you just simply take. And you can then condition yourself to build what's called resilience. You can improve heart rate variability. You're improving your capacity to hold stressful situations, and you can stay governed in those moments so you're more responsive and less reactive. And that's really, it's almost like, again, this is the gift, because it's highlighting how disempowered the human population is, how how much suffering there is in the human condition. So this is actually the perfect event now. As much as I have to say, fuck you, Bill Gates, and fuck you, World Economic Forum, and all that only highlights, again, the further disempowerment within myself.
Yeah, because
so I can be angry at one point. I can also take action. We can create change.
Because if you blame too much, then you're just a victim, and it perpetuates that hopeless feeling that you have no power over your own life. And it's a really shitty place to be.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, we've all felt that. And I think if you don't feel that, then you couldn't speak from a place that you are speaking of if you hadn't have felt that before, which I wanted to really talk about. Obviously you posted that picture on your Instagram. By the way, go follow this guy on Instagram. His Instagram is very, very good. I love everything you post. It's just funny. Sometimes it's funny.
I got to jump back on. I've been doing a lot of stories, but a lot of content. But that's one of my goals for this year, is to start putting more content out. So yeah,
I just like it, man. Even the stories, like you got a cat meme, and you got cute animals, and then you got something really deep, and then you got something else, and then you got something else. But what I want to talk about is, did you still have, or did you have Crohn's disease? What was it in particular, and what made you look so skinny? And it looks like you almost died. I'm pretty sure you did almost die. Obviously, I remember you as this big giant bodybuilder. I kind of lost connecting like on social media with you. Then one day I saw this picture of you. I was like, holy fuck, man, that's Mitch. Like, whoa, like, whoa. And ever since that, I've always wanted to chat to you about that. Like, tell me about that. Tell me about that story of, like, I don't know if you almost died. It looked like you did, but like, tell me about that.
Yeah, I definitely kissed the Grim Reaper. I mean, this is going to go probably, I'll just let it run as it needs to run, but this is a huge unpacking story.
Oh, yeah.
And if I may just kind of finish off what we're just speaking about last too, is I've been very, very angry, and I've shed a lot of tears. So again, that's why I mentioned, feel your feelings. Be mindful of where your resistance to what you're actually feeling, so you can actually process and then move forward. I wanted to really end on that note, because as regulated as I am, and as resilient as I am, I'm also emotionally mature enough to feel, and that's really emotionally mature, but definitely aware enough to go, oh, there's some fucking anger. Let's go entertain that. Let's sit with that. Let's actually sit in the discomfort. Here's the despair. Here's the hopelessness. Be in all of it so we can move forward. Wanted to end that there.
Great way to end it.
Okay, holy shit. You got your seatbelt? Buckle up. We're going for a wild ride in Kansas.
Buckle up. Here we go.
So I really have to, before I even start that story, it's a bit like a house. You have to start from the ground first. If you start from the roof, you're fucked.
Yep.
We are literally in the revealing of this broken reductionist system of medical care. Let me digress even from there and also be balanced and say medical technology, diagnostic tools, emergency care, the love of nurses, the brilliant doctors, epic, amazing, life-saving, saving millions of lives, amazing. So I want to just balance that out before I now rip a fucking new asshole to the medical system, because that's what it is. I'm not shaming anyone. It's the system. It's the cogs that are turning the wheels.
Yep.
We have a broken medical system, period. We had the Flexner report, I think it was in 1910, 1911, that completely raped the universities. You had John D. Rockefeller and you had Andrew Carnegie, and I'm quite sure a lot of other handful of families that saw the opportunity in petrochemical medications and just drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. Mm-hmm. And we lost touch with native medicine. People call herbalism and botany and medicinal mushrooms and all these things alternative medicine. The word alternative means altered from nature. The most altered form of nature are pharmaceutical drugs, and it's only about 160 years old. The native medicine is what we know. Now, I'm not going to ask my chakras aligned and some fucking St. John's wort when I'm in a car crash on the freeway. I want fentanyl, an anesthetic, and a surgeon. Yeah. So again, let's bring balance to the conversation, because that's where love exists, having two sides recognize the beauty in both and the shadow in both, the downside. So I wanted to start there. But we have a sick care system. There's no way in fucking hell we have a healthcare system. Because isn't it interesting that I haven't been sick in 4 years and have more energy than ever outside of that system? And when I was in that system, listening to these authorities, again, I'm not going to shame, just doing their job, brilliant what they did in that field, sicker than ever, more confused than ever, more frustrated than ever. So you either have to look at this conversation through two lenses: the allopathic medical industry, who looks at the human body as a robot, essentially a machine, and in a reductionist way. In other words, I have an arm and the arm is the arm connected to the body, versus the arm is a part of the whole. It's inseparable. No system is ever injured alone. This is Dr. Perry Nicholson talking right now. No system, no part of the body is ever injured alone, nor heals alone. Everything is systemic. Every cell in your body operates in simultaneous fashion. There's this whole energy system going on. And if you're starting to look at the body through reality and a little bit deeper in kind of like biology, which is, more cells and tissue as opposed to like structure of like organs and stuff, that also makes things a lot easier to understand. Because when we think about it, like, what's the human body comprised of? A lot of cells and a lot of fluid. Yeah. So when you're looking at dis-ease as opposed to disease, one word, and also the word cure, may I add, which if you look at the etymology of the word cure, comes from the word curare, which is Latin, which just simply means to take care of. So when you're curing yourself of a dis-ease, you are taking care of what is in the way and what is the cause and effect. This world is navigated by chemistry and physics, laws of thermodynamics, and pure, plain and simple. Laws, rules, boundaries. If I jump off a building, I'm likely to die because of physics. Mm-hmm. Your body is no different. Bunch of cells, a lot of fluids, and a lot of that is, not a lot, all of it is operated by chemistry and physics. And when you interrupt its ability to function optimally, there are ranges in which it now becomes suboptimal. The way the cell can function, the way it can take nutrients in, metabolize nutrients, and excrete nutrients. And if I'm bringing the conversation forward and kind of just weaving this all together, when I was diagnosed in the allopathic industry as having, it's called Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. They were going back and forth, but essentially a fucked up gut. And if you just look at it as reality, there's dysfunction. It's not an autoimmune disease. That's a medical concept. It's not incurable, because that's now makes it a one-sided experience. If you have it, you have it for life, and there's no going back on it. And there's context to that. But if you're looking at the body as a constant moving energetic experience, you can then go, well, what if in physics there's cause and effect? What is the cause to have this effect? And so you can start reverse engineering this process to start understanding the body as to why. For most people, and most what I would call, again, diseases, are due to chronic stress.
Yeah, it's not the
and it's not just like the work, like financial stress. I'm just talking stress as an umbrella term that takes any human being's experience away from what we would call homeostasis, because we have a lot of homeostatic mechanisms to keep the body in balance, in equanimity and equilibrium. It's like when you get a blood test, what do you want? You want your blood markers in the middle, not too high, not too little. What do you want your blood pressure? 120/80, not too high, not too low. Everything is about balance and equilibrium when it comes to health. So when you're seeing the lack of health, you're seeing the lack of balance. You're seeing the increase of degeneration to tissue, cells, telomeres, DNA, RNA, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. And you're also then comparing it to the regeneration, because cells regenerate. They're born, they divide, they grow, they mature, and then they die. So when your rate of degeneration starts to supersede your rate of regeneration, and you're smashing through a lot of your like calcium buffering system, cholesterol buffering system, you have an edemic buffering system, all these defense mechanisms, your immune system's going crazy, all these lymphocytes and T cells and B cells are going, there's only so much you can do before eventually you're going to see a sign and a symptom. It's a bit like water. You're going to see, feel the glass, feel the glass, feel the glass. You're going to have all this surface tension, and that one last little drop is going to hit the water and it all spills over. Boom. Yeah. And that's pretty much health into not health. That's health into dis-ease. Oh, I got a pain here. Oh, I got a tightness here. Oh, I got a rash here. That symptom is not the disease. That symptom is the supercompensation and feedback. High blood pressure is not a disease. High blood pressure is the compensation to keep you alive. And what an idiotic system to go, you have high blood pressure. That's our disease. We'll give you some benzodiazepine and we'll give you some, fucking ACE inhibitors or whatever they give you these days. It's ridiculous. Now,
makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
Can these medications work? It does. Well, can these medications work? Absolutely. Do medications save lives? Absolutely. Not denying that. This is the context of health, and any half-decent doctor, and you're seeing so many, and this is why I take my hat off to a lot of the medical industry, of the people who are now stepping up and stepping forward and using their voice and going against their very own system, that paid $250,000 and spent 6 years doing the residency. They're going, nah, something's wrong here. They're now stepping up. They're understanding the role of nutrition, the role of sunlight, vitamin D, exercise, sleep, heart rate variability, breathing, and breathing dynamics, and all these different modalities to bring about balance. Do you know how many stories and anecdotes, and there's only so many anecdotes you need before you have to start a randomized controlled trial and get serious scientific evidence of how many people I've seen who had cancer-free, multiple sclerosis free, some sort of neurodegenerative disease, now disease-free, some sort of heart disease, now disease-free. They didn't cure shit, though when one lens you could look at that. They reversed the damage that got them there in the first place. Because if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, stupid or insane, pick one. That's Einstein. So I want to weave this now back to kind of my story. I was diagnosed with a disease, this incurable autoimmune disease. Crohn's is out to get me. It's all fucked up and there's no answers and it's incurable. And if here's your drugs, and if they don't work, we'll just cut your bowels out. That's their view. I was literally, after when I first got diagnosed, so I didn't have a warm-up. I literally basically had someone get an 8-inch fucking Stanley knife and just shove it into my guts and just rub it around and pull it around like it was on to off.
That's how it feels to experience that.
Absolutely. The worst pain. I know mothers on the forum. I used to go on the forums a lot. I'm an internet kid. I was born in the 90s, so I'm on the internet a lot. And I used to get on the forums a lot because I love people's experiences. I cared more about people's experiences, and there was something about intuitively that I knew that I get more out of hearing people than listening to doctors at that point. And every single mother that I'd ever seen would always say, I would rather go through childbirth than the pain of ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease.
Wow.
And I would completely agree with that. Not that I've had a child,
shit.
But just knowing the magnitude of pain. So it's painful, very, very painful. And the worst part is it's the one system in your body that food goes through. At least if you have arthritis and you've got a sore shoulder, you can still enjoy food and digest it and take a nice shit. Versus having food choice anxiety, wondering if it's going to fuck you up. So before it's even hit your mouth, you're already in stress. This is the catch-22. You got low stomach acid, you got bacterial overgrowth because you're super acidic and dehydrated, your stomach enzymes, you're fucked up, your pancreas is not producing enough amylase and tylen, all that. So you can't even enjoy food because there's so much dysfunction. And then the food becomes like sandpaper on your bowel wall because it's all ulcerated or lacerated and there's lesions and polyps and cysts. So you now have food acting as sandpaper. So now you develop this poor relationship to nutrition and food because it's now your enemy. And you have to, again, be constantly thinking about where a toilet is or what food to eat or what's accepted, what's not. So the level of fucking mental real estate that these people go through just breaks my heart, because I know exactly what they've gone through. And that's what I went through. And then I had go to, because you're now either malabsorbed, because your intestinal villi aren't absorbing things like iron and your heavier minerals, you become iron deficient, then iron deficient anemic. I'm having blood transfusions, iron infusions. I'm having all kinds of different B12 injections, and so much confusion, Ahren. And I went in and out of that system for 7 years. 7 years. And this is the thing too. I always knew there was something wrong, but I gave my power away. And there was a level of trust. White coat, you're the authority, you know what's best, surely. So again, this is why I brought up the whole resistance thing. I was in massive resistance. I knew there was something wrong, but I still trusted in authority and I gave my power away. And there was a massive lesson in that. Now, the pain of remaining the same outweighed the pain of changing. That's actually ironically and paradoxically when I changed. And that's when I really started going down the natural health and holistic field. But unfortunately for me, it was too late. And this is what I meant back when I said there's context to reversing all disease, because it's a bit like piss in the ocean. Once it's there, you can't get it out. And there are people that have gone too far that will either require surgical intervention or some type of pharmaceutical therapeutic drug acutely. Very rarely will you need a drug for life. Very, very rarely. I'm so digressing here, but I remember there's even a PubMed study looking at type 1 diabetics, where the islands of Langerhans are no longer producing adequate amounts of insulin. And even after, I think it was some older group, it was like they'd been on insulin for like 30 years and they still had islet cell regeneration, showing that the human body regenerates. All cells regenerate. I find it bizarre. If you cut your skin, you don't go, I've got now skinatitis and there's this autoimmune disease and it's never going to heal and I've got to take these drugs. You just let your skin fucking heal. If you break a bone, what do? You rest it. You don't keep driving, riding on your skateboard to induce more. You rest it. You get a moon boot for 6 weeks and then it heals. You don't go, now I have broken legatitis and identify with it. It's this terrible autoimmune disease and it's all fucked. It heals. So why is it that we see things like the skin and the bones this way? But if it's like involves an organ or an endocrine gland, all of a sudden that's a disease. That's different. Cancer is different. There's no way it's curable. You have to do chemo radiation and burn yourself fucking alive.
My mom went through chemo and she said if she ever got cancer again, she would never do it for what it did to her. She's like, I'd rather just live my life. I was like, fair enough.
Yeah. And look, there was a survey. I don't know how, I can't verify this, but I've heard this multiple times. So if anyone wants to go out there and verify this, please do. Something like over 85% of the top oncologists in the world, there's this huge survey, said that they wouldn't even do chemo.
Yeah, I've heard that.
What they've seen. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm not going to say, look, take that with, all the holy gospel, but there are many doctors who wouldn't. I definitely know that. Spoken to oncologists. I go, yeah, definitely not. And I'm not saying don't do chemo if you listen to this, and like, don't, stop all your treatment. But the reality is that this whole system of being, reductionist and pharmaceutical drugs or nothing else, and there's no way that we can reverse, incurable diseases, is just hog shit. And it's all changing because people day in, day out are showing that they divorce themselves from this system. They go off and learn a little bit about true detoxification, not a 3-day skinny lemon juice fast, true detoxification, lymphatic health, nervous system re-regulation. They learn how to breathe. They understand the importance of sunshine and all these natural things, all these, I just say modalities that support regeneration. You're not trying to not ever damage your body because death is inevitable. That's why we age. That's why we have wrinkles, oxidative stress. And when you even eat food, you're literally producing aging. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to not eat. When you breathe, that's oxidative phosphorylation. You're not going to not breathe, right? We're all going to die. So it's not about not dying and being, immortal or something like, some utopian distortion of reality. What it is, again, about being in balance, harmony, ease, equanimity, equilibrium.
Yeah.
And being connected to your body as a vessel, which self-heals and self-regenerates if given the right circumstances. And why finding the root cause or causes, plural, are essential if you're serious about reversing chronic illness. Now, let me just quickly take a breath and piggyback on that. There is also a secondary part to this, which is your identity. Because some people, I'm going to give you an example, and this may resonate for some people, became sick because they needed to fulfill a core human need. Some people won't get healthy because their identity of being sick fulfills a certain core human need. For example, I was the Crohn's guy. Mm-hmm. I had a level of sympathy and love and attention and care from even just friends and acquaintances, let alone my partner at the time, who was a beautiful caretaker. And that level of love and nurture would have gone away had I got healthy. And there are these unconscious defense mechanisms and also these unconscious ways in which we actually bargain with our pain, bargain with our identity of sickness, and actually want to stay stuck because it benefits us. One of the first questions I ask people with chronic disease when they come to me for regenerative work and healing and chronic disease reversal is, how does being ill benefit you? And we don't move forward until they give me a whole fucking list, literally top to bottom, of how being sick benefits their life. And they jump on the call and they go, I never knew this. Holy shit. It's usually like some fucking whack to the face because they never explored. It's always been negative, one-sided, conscious of the downsides, unconscious of the upsides. And that's why they stay stuck, because they're attached to the identity of being sick and they're unaware of how it actually benefits them. Once you can establish that, getting healthy is actually quite easy. It's not very terribly difficult. The majority of the challenge with people when coaching, not so much now because I've done it for so long, but initially it was actually their mindset. It was not actually, quote unquote, getting them to cure themselves and taking care of themselves and restoring a level of health. It was actually divorcing the egoic and the egocentricity around the identity they had built. It's Crohn's warrior, cancer warrior, this type of warrior, survivor, very victimized and identified with. So,
because you're basically, I had Aubrey Marcus said something. I listened to that guy a lot. What an interesting thought leader that guy is. The way that they do, holy shit. He said they were talking about when you get somebody to try and change their mind, what you're actually asking somebody to do. You're actually asking somebody to kill part of themselves.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what you're saying. That when you ask that question, nobody maybe even close with them would ever dare to ask that question, because maybe number one, they've never thought of asking that question, but you can ask that question because obviously you've dealt with that and you've probably helped a lot of people. It's like, how does whatever your terrible situation that's ever happened to you, how does that actually benefit you? It's very interesting. It's a very, very interesting. I want to ask you a question. Obviously, everything you're saying all that kind of stuff. I think that is one side of it, and the identity is one side of it. But then there's another side of it that I think that a lot of people, it's hard to logically, we live in a very mind world. Everything needs to be explained. If you can't explain it, it's not real. Mm-hmm. How much does trauma and like trauma within the own body, like my friend Marcus, who I'm excited to do a podcast with next, he's like, your issues are in your tissues. I remember
one of those sayings I use a lot.
I remember we went to this men's weekend and I was thinking about, I still have a real thing where every woman I've ever been with, I have a father thing where I'm attracted to women that have issues with a parent or a father, and I try and fill that role. And that's like I'm working through right now. And even when I say it right now, I feel my whole thing, like I get uncomfortable. Even saying it to you right now, I'm like, ugh. And you got to sit in that. You got to sit in that and be like, why? Why does that make you feel like that? And I have this thing right near my scapula. And I was talking to Marcus, I was like really thinking about it. And I was like, man, like every time I think about it, it flares up. He's a personal trainer. Like he has his own personal training business. Like he's very, very knowledgeable. Teaches people how to breathe. Literally, that's step one. But before anything, I'm going to teach you how to breathe and strengthen everything. Yeah. And he said, well, the personal trainer in me is like, well, you got a tight muscle, but the shaman in me says that that's trauma and that you need to deal with that. And I was like, that perspective right there, I was like, how much do you think trauma has to do with everything? Like people could maybe like start that reversing process and things like that. But I think, in my opinion, that there's other stuff that is at play that you cannot, it's maybe hard to prove scientifically right now. And I know that it's actually starting to be proven, like trauma and things like that. Like,
oh, that's well established for sure.
It's all proven.
Even in chronic health.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. but yeah, like what's your perspective on that? Like childhood trauma and like how that causes, because I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine, Sean, right?
Yeah, go for it.
And he was on a sleep apnea machine for 15, 20 years, right? He went and did a solo journey with one of the people on the island here that we go to. And he was doing this, and he was talking about how he's like, all his bones started cracking. He's like, every time he take a breath, you could feel more and more and breathe more and more and more. And he realized he did some psilocybin, like probably 5 or 6 grams, I think. He was probably going to tell the story. He's going to come on this podcast one. He's going to tell this story. This is my very shortened version of it. Basically, he discovered that there was a point when he was very young that he felt like he needed to hold his breath. When he was a kid, it was something to do with his mother or something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he started like thinking about this and going down this rabbit hole. And he's like, every time I take a breath, like his spine would crack, and literally his whole body is like cracking, and it's crazy. And you might tell a person that has never maybe done that kind of work or ever even explored that, like they'd be looking at you like, okay,
crazy.
Are you fucking what? And then basically doesn't use a sleep apnea machine anymore. That night he went to sleep after having this massive, he was vomiting up energy, like going, ugh, and there's all this energy coming out of him. He's literally dry heaving energy into a bucket, right? There's crazy stuff. And you tell people like, what do you mean dry heaving energy? It's just like, kind of have to see it to believe it. Because when I saw it for the first time, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Holy shit. And then he doesn't have a sleep apnea machine anymore. He's healthier. He lost all this weight, like everything, no inflammation, things like that. And that was just from dealing with something that happened as a child. So, I mean, like, what's your perspective on that? Like how much,
Sure.
Yeah, like speak to that. Love to hear what your thoughts are on everything I just said.
Yeah. I really I feel like the field of trauma is both simple, complex, and everything in between. So I think the first thing to establish is when the audience is listening, like, what are we talking about when we say trauma? And I like to think of trauma simply as a response. People think seeing your parents murdered was the trauma, or being raped was the trauma. It's not. That was traumatic. Okay. And that was a very, very powerful distinction when I was listening to the work of Dr. Gabor Mate.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the most forefront physicians in the world when it comes
from here.
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, beautiful man. Just digressing real quick, I remember his thing with ayahuasca was like, in my 40 years of psychotherapy training, I got more out of one sitting with ayahuasca than my 40 years of psychotherapy.
He was like, I remember listening to that on a podcast or something. He was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the first thing to establish. When we talk about trauma, think of it just simply as a response. When you go to the gym, you traumatize your muscles. You induce micro traumas for an adaptability through hormesis and other mechanisms through the trauma response. There's a pro-inflammatory cytokine whole thing, and growth and repair and all that. So think of it as a response. It can be a response to any type of stimuli or experience or event, which are all really one and the same thing. I want to digress real quick with normalizing the experience of purging, because that's something you brought up. The body has multiple ways of purging what I will call traumatic energy, or the trauma response that's been stuck in the tissues. Issues are in our tissues. Love it. So how do we purge? Well, we sweat every day. We breathe out carbon dioxide every day. We urinate, we defecate. They're the 4 major channels of elimination. But we can also purge energy through different means. That might be vocalizing, because you were pinned down by an abusive lover. Well, it sounds paradoxical to say lover, but let's say abusive partner. And you always suppressed your voice, and you always wanted to say, fuck you, or you want to say, get off me, I don't this. And you never said that. So vocalizing using your throat is ways in which we see a lot of trauma purge. That's expression. Feeling emotion. So again, anger and how that's represented, that might be yelling and screaming and bashing your fists and tapping your feet. Like I'm kind of speaking if I was in a session with someone mostly doing felt sense work and somatic work and breath work and all that. Sweating, that's you generally with the hotter emotions. So things like anger and rage, a lot of these hot emotions, you'll see people sweat. I've seen literally a dry t-shirt on someone come in and a wet t-shirt leave. I've seen the opposite, things, colder emotions like grief and sorrow and sadness. I've seen people in a 35-degree room in summer shiver. Sweating, tremors, shaking. You know, if we look at, say, National Geographic, when an impala or a gazelle is chased by a, you know, big fucking alpha lion or something, and hopefully it gets away. And you will see the level of pupil dilation and respiration and all the things that when they're fight flight, because of this stimuli, that experience being quite traumatic. But the animals in nature aren't conditioned in the ways that humans are with culture and societal things and all these ways in which we distort reality. Animals are innate. An impala doesn't need to try to be an impala. And what all mammals have is this innate instinct to discharge trauma once the threat's gone. And you will see this. You will see impalas, gazelles, deers, or any animal that runs from a lion in fight flight. Sometimes they might be catatonic because they actually get caught and they go dorsal vagal, they immobilize, and they literally go catatonic. Then they come back to fight flight. And what happens in that space to go from this fight flight system of survival and threat back into ventral vagal safety, can be sociable, interact with their environment, and they're quote unquote safe, is they will tremor. And you will see this. You'll just literally see them on the ground or out, and they just like this tremor, and shake and shake and shake. And as soon as it's out and they can bring the vagal brake in and they can get back to safety, they'll just start eating fucking grass like nothing happened. Literally. And the day was saved. And so we do, we have that experience, we have that ability, but often we don't get repair, we don't get soothing. So I'm going to give you a great example about bodybuilding. And I've told this story before, but I actually, it still blows me away, the level in which this trauma response can impact your life and doesn't serve your highest good. And then why you can judge yourself and shame yourself and be so confused and wonder why you think something consciously, but you do something else unconsciously. And it's to your detriment. When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I saw my father pin down my oldest brother. And he was a Navy man. He had PTSD, bless him. And he didn't have the tools to work with his healing. Yep. And he was never violent with me, thank God. And he wasn't like violent consistently, but there were moments like a volcano, you erupt. And I remember the first time I experienced powerlessness. I was watching my brother being pinned down, hand on wrist, and my father was large too, about 130, 140 kilos, like crushing my older brother. I was still only about 11 or 12 at the time. And that's very traumatic. That is extreme fight flight, seeing like your brother like being, like, what the fuck do you do at 6 or 7 years old? I couldn't physically help him. So I was powerless. Full-blown 100% powerless. The only thing I could muster up in that moment was enough energy to my lungs and my vocal cords to scream, "Get off him!" Just scream and scream and scream. Bit of a blur because, again, traumatic experiences, your brain's not really going, let's really remember this. But I remember vague things. I remember like images, right? So there was one thing I do remember, there was no repair. There was no let everything cool off, put the fire out, and then bring Mitch aside and put him on your lap and go, "Hey, Mitch, Daddy had a really bad day at work, was really stressed and didn't mean that. He's so sorry. I love you. You're safe."
Yeah. That's
called repair. And when you have repair, you don't have the trauma response. You don't have the traumatic experience impact your life. You're able to discharge and or resolve. Have a good cry, have a shake, have a hug, shed some tears, bond through love again. Love heals all things. Love can hold all things. Whether it was 2 weeks later, 2 months later, it doesn't matter. I remember seeing Dragon Ball Z on TV. These larger than life characters who fought for justice, never gave up. They would always fight. They would always stand for what was right. And they would always, no matter blood, nose, broken bones, they would just keep on fighting for justice and good and to save. That shaped my trauma response to become the savior. And when I saw a real life bodybuilder, two-time Mr. Australia, Louis Maciel, good buddy of mine, who was Mr. Australia at the time, and he trained in South Fremantle Gym, the warehouse. The first time I saw him squatting, 260 kilos, like it was fucking nothing, my filter to try and find resolve and repair went, fucking sign me up. I will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to be the best, biggest, badass, strongest bodybuilder. Now, to paint the whole picture, I love bodybuilding. I still love bodybuilding. I still build my body today. I feel like I build my body, I don't bodybuild. And I love the Arnie, and I love pumping iron and all those things. But this is also when I was literally shitting blood and in so much pain. And here I am still injecting steroids. Here I am still taking pre-workout. Here I'm still getting blood noses and blood hands from training. Here I am still pounding 5,000 calories to put on muscle and make those gains. All the while, my body's literally going, fuck you, I'm in pain. And I'm not listening to that. because at the deepest part of this trauma response was the belief that if I could just be big enough and if I could just be strong enough, I could go back in time and save my brother.
That little boy, that
little boy,
that inner child work. I've had some pretty profound experiences myself, like the way that I look, the way that I'm covered in tattoos and all this kind of stuff, and going down all of that. Like, one of the most profound things that I've ever experienced was, I just want to kind of relate to you in a way, is like, I was doing breath work, and the person who was guiding the breath work, she was like, "What does your inner child want to say right now?" And I was like, this is my response. I was like, this is weird. Like, it's the first time I've ever done it. I was like, I don't know what to expect, not a clue. And all of a sudden, like, the little, like, 11-year-old version of me is like, "Why do you want to kill me?" I was like, what? Like, holy shit, wasn't ready for that. And I just broke, and just tears. And I realized that as I grew older, as I went through adolescence, as I was very sensitive, I used to grow flowers, I used to grow orchids. I used to paint my little Lord of the Rings Warhammer things that came in the magazines. Remember those things? The little Warhammer Lord of the Rings models. I used to paint those. And I was really sensitive, and I loved animals, and like I had snails as friends and shit, and I used to name them. I was just this beautiful, sensitive little boy. And I tried to kill him for years. That's what I did. I did the steroids, got all the tattoos, like was selling drugs, and like got into this really bad place. And like, I don't know if you remember Ben. Remember Ben Geldart? Remember that guy with the tattoos and stuff? And he had the tattoos on his face. You'd know him if you saw him. But he died of an overdose like 5-6 years ago. And like, looking back on that, I was like, he does the same thing. Like, it's all just, you can link it all together, and you can see it all together. And it's just like those little things as a little boy, like, it's so crazy. Like, I know exactly that feeling. And it was me being bullied. And I remember my dad was going through some mental health issues, and my dad actually grabbed me by the throat once. And I remember starting to lift weights because I wanted to beat up my dad.
Yeah.
I wanted to beat up my dad.
Again, that's the response, right?
Yeah.
Like, we have to think of trauma not as the event, the response in which it shapes us.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And that's what the work is.
It's exactly right. And not that you want to kind of obsess about it, you just be curious about doing your inner work. You don't rush healing. If you cut your skin, again, you don't yell at your skin to heal faster. Healing is a very tender process. It can also be very fun. It can be playful. You can realize so much about yourself and grow, but it's generally a pretty tender process because you are dealing with the more innocent parts. And you are dealing with the parts that are usually pretty overwhelmed and were threatened and denied and abandoned. They're suffering from deep neglect, and they feel like they're alone and alienated. Shame. That's it. So much guilt as well. So be tender. But if we're weaving, kind of circumventing back, this is how also you can, with the trauma response and pending the environments you grew up in, because environments are king, is how dysregulated and disconnected and disassociated you can become from reality, and how that can then induce chronic health conditions.
Interesting.
Do you know what is about? Well, let me actually take back what I was going to say. The fourth or fifth thing I would say that I work on when I have a client who comes to me with IBS or IBD, any kind of inflammatory bowel condition, about the fourth or fifth thing we go through is nutrition. Because people think that the problem is the foods that they eat. Nothing could be further from the truth. First things we go through are your environment. First things you go through, what environment did you grow up in? What environment are you currently in now? What's your home environment like? What's your work environment like? What are all the environments that you put yourself in like? And how does that make you respond differently outside of being authentic? Some people mold themselves as a little girl because their boss reminds them of their father. Some people do X because it reminds them of Y. And if you're not aware of this, you're always going to stay in those unconscious patterns and mask and armor. And that's fucking exhausting. That pulls your Jing energy down. It's in traditional Chinese medicine. It's like the wax of your candle. It depletes Jing immensely. That's why people are so tired. I've had 2,000 calories, but I got no energy. No, what you have is no vitality. So, that's number one. And then it's like, okay, and how do you breathe? Most people have an inverted breathing pattern. They go chest first, belly second. Wrong. I had no fucking cloud to breathe. I was a chest breather too. It's like, no. Belly first. Diaphragmatic activation, vagus nerve stimulation, then open the rib cage. If you can do that alone probably fix half people's issues. And then it's like, yeah, what trauma did you suffer from as a child? And how's that impacted you? Like, where's your heart rate variability at? Where is your nervous system at? Because pretty much every part of the 8.5 meter journey from your mouth to your butthole has some sort of nerve interact with it, some sort of nervous system connection to it. Give me a good example. If you're chronically stressed 24, like low grade, chronically stressed 24/7. So you've tilted the seesaw, you're in fight flight, you're now releasing therapeutic amounts of adrenaline, cortisol to match that. You're taking blood out of the viscera, you're downregulating stomach acid, you're downregulating pancreatic enzymes, you're downregulating intestinal motility. You're downregulating so much of what the parasympathetic branch, rest and digest, that's why it's called that, rest and regenerate, rest and procreate. You're not in that system to accept food. The hardware's off. So you can literally digest a McDonald's burger better in a regulated nervous system and a regulated digestive system than, say, organic blueberries in someone who's completely fucking dysregulated and stressed.
So interesting, man. Such healing words for a lot of people if they listen to this, because a lot of people I know a lot of people that are just like, they've got, like, for example, they have fibromyalgia. It was a little bit of a Lick-Dexic moment there.
Fibromyalgia, lupus, Lyme, fucking tick, no bullshit, acidosis, basically, dehydrated, deficient.
I don't know. I don't really know what it is, so we'll just say there's the label of a fibromyalgia.
Here's some prednisone. Yep. Here's some fucking captopril or some bullshit drug to suppress. Yeah, just crazy. Yeah. I had a lady with I had a woman with quote unquote fibromyalgia, went between lupus and fibromyalgia. They couldn't work it out. Had to keep changing it just to make things interesting. She had tried everything. And I mean everything. I said, what have you tried? She gave me this fucking list, bro. She tried like psychics and fucking, she goes, I'm not even religious. She said, I tried prayer. She goes, for me, that was like the last straw. She goes, after prayer, I was like, if prayer doesn't work, I'm fucked. Then she found me, thankfully. But she had tried everything, all kinds of detoxes, enemas, colonics, you name it. The one thing she hadn't done is learn about her lymph system and her nervous system and re-regulation. And within something like 6 weeks, she went from literally wanting to kill herself to basically pain-free. So again, like, it just blows my fucking mind. And it's why, again, the game is changing. Like, there is massive change. I'm not here to point and blame, because it is changing. It's just going to take a while, because it's 7.8 billion human beings. It takes a while. We're slow. And, but it just goes to show you that, sometimes the most simplest things, when you can learn how to feel safe in your body, because there's a huge component of safety when you have chronic illness, not feeling safe in your own body and not feeling like you can trust yourself. Oh man, there's some of the biggest things. So if you can renegotiate your connection and your relationship to the way you trust yourself, your belief in yourself, even hope, that's a huge healing tool. Most people lost hope because they've tried 16 things, they spent $70,000, so they got no hope. I get it. They're exhausted. How are you going to hope that the 17th thing's going to work? I get it. But yeah, that element of feeling safe, feeling like you can trust yourself, and coming back to simplicity too, and getting out of the mind, because the body knows how to heal. You don't have to think about how to heal a cut skin. You just let it heal. So look, there's context in there, because obviously there are some specific things, and you do have to learn about how do you nurture and how do you take care of it and how do you get the fuck out of the way. But the process is pretty simple. It's all the unconscious stuff that's underneath. It's like an iceberg. You see 5%, but my golly, 95% under the water. And that's where the magic is. So you can tap into those unconscious parts. And when you can make people aware of their unconscious or their shadows or their identities, anything they're not aware of, that's really what unawareness and being unconscious is. There's no vantage point between you and what's there. It's a bit like also having a piece of paper when you write on it. If you hold it too close to your eyes, you can see it. Sorry, you can look at it, but you can't see it. It's not until you pull back, then you have the vantage point, you have the contrast, you have the ability to see what's in front of you. And that's where you reveal the unconscious of the conscious. You make the unconscious conscious. And now you're empowered because you have choice. You're not a victim.
Yeah. It's a thing, a lot of people kind of going back to like the whole fear and what a lot of governments have been doing is they give people hope, and then the narrative changes. Like, if you take this vaccine, for example, or take this dose of this, then it's funny. I saw footage from a year ago of everything that everybody was saying. Like, this vaccine totally kills COVID. It's gone. And then all the people, for example, in Canada right now, you have to, well, in BC, actually, it's in all of Canada, I think, you have to be double vaccinated, have 2 shots of Moderna or Pfizer or whatever, to go into any indoor space, excluding like a grocery store or a liquor store. So you have to show a vaccine passport if you want to go to a restaurant. You have to show a vaccine passport if you want to go to a game. And 83% of Canada is vaccinated, apparently. So, and all these people are the ones that are getting this COVID disease, right? Apparently. So it's just, it doesn't make sense. And then people have this hope, like things are going to open it back up. And then it's just like, oh, but everybody who's actually vaccinated is getting the COVID. And it's just like, and then there's all these things that constantly change. And it's hard when people are given hope by people they're supposed to trust, including the government and things like that, friends, family, because they're just listening to what the government's saying. And then it's just this roller coaster. And I think it's getting to the point now where even like
it's mass psychosis, bro. It's just mass psychosis.
Yeah, and
mass brainwashing, mass psychosis.
And people say that, and you're like, oh, like I know that there's people that I know that will listen to this, even family members, friends that are just like on board with it. And,
okay, well, let me just jump in. Let me just interrupt real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I invite people, because I'm not going to tell them they're a sheep and they're brainwashing us. I'm just calling a spade a spade. But let me actually speak to that. If there is anyone listening that believes that the government has the best interest, have a think about your own life and the people in it that have either betrayed you, stabbed you in the back, let you down, disappointed you. How many women have been in abusive relationships where they were love bombed by a narcissist, the knight in shining armor, and then they would be abused and little bit by little bit and manipulated. And you're here to tell me that you don't think those same people exist with money and suits. I'll also tell you a quick story about when, I used to coach local gymnastics.
Yeah.
And there was favoring and there was, bribery, and there was fucking gymnastic mums. There was all kind of bitchiness. There were judges that would favor athletes and all that kind of. Now, that's little old Perth with little girls gymnastics. You're telling me that when it comes to the global financial system, oil, pharmaceutical, insurance, and all these top commodities and entities in the world, that there isn't corruption? Oh, yeah. But no. You just have to consider the possibility that that actually exists and come to terms with it, because most people don't want to peek beyond the veil. That's what's really happening there. This is a divorce from reality, because God forbid, if it were true, it would shatter their entire reality. And it's a very, very, very childhood delusion and distortion of reality. And it's what has kept them safe. And this is also, again, revealing the level of disempowerment in the human population. And why, when you actually grow up and mature, you can see things as they are, not what you wish them to be. You just know.
It's a very jagged pill for a lot of people to swallow, and people are not ready to potentially consider that possibility. And
it is.
I heard something Aubrey Marcus said. Just always, I listened to him a lot. I listened to this one recently with this guy, Daniel Schmachtenberger. Very funny name, last name.
Very interesting name, yeah.
Very cool, dude.
I mean, the Daniel's pretty normal, but the last one's pretty
like his last name's cool. It's like, I don't know if it's German or something, but anyway, Aubrey said something. He's like, all human beings want to feel safe. And if you can understand that people that are getting their 3rd booster shot or their 4th booster shot, and they're wearing 2 or 3 masks, and they just want to feel safe. And if they see people that are not doing that, they're like, why the fuck is that person doing that? And it's not making me feel safe. And then there's people on the other spectrum who are like, dude, like, why the fuck are you wearing a mask? Why are you getting that thing injected into you? That doesn't make me feel safe. And if you can have compassion for both of those people, and that you're just like, man, they just both want to feel safe. That's all it is.
They're doing the right thing.
They both believe they're doing the right thing. And that the problem is that a lot of people don't have that point of view. And I've tried to have what I just said. I've quoted that to people, and the person's like, yeah, but they're still a fucking idiot. I'm like, you're dehumanizing another human being. You're trying to make them the other, the same way that, oh, well, the Nazis did this, or that group of people did that. The same reason racism exists, the same reason any kind of othering of a different group of people exists, because you're trying to dehumanize them, because a normal human being wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't do that, and I'm normal. And I think that that's the biggest thing that is creating a lot of things. There's black and white, there's Democrats, there's Republicans, there's vaxxers, there's anti-vaxxers, and it's just like, no, we're all just human beings that believe that what we're doing is safe for people, for us and for people around us. It's just like, it's hard, man. It's hard.
Yeah, and look, it's in, in Hindu philosophy, they would call this the drama of God. This is the magnetic dance. Yeah, vax, anti-vax, Republican, Democrat, left, right. It's the same thing. So when you understand that, you come back to a place of truth. Truth is the center ground, and truth comes from your heart. The heart is so patient, so knowing. It doesn't need to justify. It doesn't need to work off conditions. It just knows. So when you speak your truth, there's a level of potency in that because people feel it. We feel. Again, how many times do you know you've been lied, your face lied to, but you believed it because someone's words said it and your brain justified that linguistics, but you knew, like you felt something wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
So when you can come to a place of truth, that's far more potent because you're neutral, you're governed, you're in equilibrium. And again, this is just the dance of duality. That's why when you're divorced from it, it doesn't really affect you anymore. You can jump into it, and you can be emotional, you can jump into it, you can dance with the whirlwind in the washing machine, but then you can quickly remove yourself, come back to presence, ground yourself, and just be in presence, and just know that you are always divinely guided, you're always safe. Even when I was getting close to death is easy, life is hard, let me tell you. Death is super easy. Life is difficult, but the degree to which you resist it is what makes the suffering. When you accept pain, knowing that pain is dual forces pleasure, you're grateful for pain and you're grateful for pleasure. Because pleasure is a finite moment in time, and pain is a finite moment in time. And whether you're vax or anti-vax, you're this, you're that, you're one or the other, you're black, white, gay, straight, doesn't really matter. End of the day, you are a human being. You are so incredibly unique, and at the same time, you're also part of the most beautiful one energy system that we know of. This beautiful mystical thing called love. And this is the thing, is like most people, like the majority of the human race are extremely kind, loving people, especially Canadians from what I hear.
Yep.
Love it. So this brainwashing program has turned lovely, beautiful people into people that will dob on their neighbors, shame people for not wearing a mask, yell at people for not checking with a vaccine passport, because that's where the brainwashing and the fear and the limbic brain take over governance. They know this. These motherfuckers, they're not idiots. They're seasoned experts. They've done it for hundreds, if not thousands of years to control. It's a bit like the shepherd and the sheep. Can you imagine if the shepherd all of a sudden created a problem? Because the sheep are going to get slaughtered. They don't know that, but the shepherd does. And then all of a sudden the shepherd builds a 3x3 gazebo with some nice lovely beds for the sheep. And the sheep go, look, our shepherd's so amazing. He's trying to protect us. And it's like, man, motherfucker, these other sheep, they're waking up. They're going, no. This motherfucker's trying to kill us. Stop it, you idiot. Look, but why aren't you grateful? The government's looking after us. It just gives us a 3x3 gazebo with a fucking lazy boy and a kettle and a toaster. We now going to have this, and this. They just don't see it. And that's okay. Again, this is where if your spiritual involvement and your level of consciousness sees beyond the veil, you have a responsibility and a duty to get the fuck out of your own way and identify with your own ego. And so you be the guiding light. You actually are just a permission slip. And you know that when it comes to awakening people, you cannot force it.
No.
What happens when you try to go to sleep? You try to force going to sleep. You only start longer. You get more frustrated. Neo in the Matrix, when he woke up, and Trinity and Morpheus, they're not going through the Matrix running around going, wake up, you're in a computer simulated program. People will wake up when they're ready.
Yeah.
They will wake up to their infinite godly potential. They will wake up to their own presence and their own awareness and their own connection to the cosmos and the universe when they're ready. The only thing you can do is influence. Only lead a horse to water, as the old expression goes. So I used to be in that. This was, again, that little savior thing. Everyone has to wake up and take 6 cups of ayahuasca.
Same.
Yep. We all, that's a part of the phase. Like, it's part of the journey too. Going through the spiritual ego, you have to learn how to identify with that. So, or not identify with it. So now it is this more grounded knowingness that whatever happens will happen and won't happen any other way outside of the control I have with myself, my hands, my actions, my words, and my capacity to love everyone. Just because I lose someone as a friend doesn't mean I game as an enemy. Just because someone does wrong by me doesn't mean I hate them.
Yeah.
There is literally room for love because love births all things, good, bad, high, low, positive, negative. And that is really the journey of like, how much darkness can you love? how much negativity can you accept and love and bring in closer and integrate more? Because if you reject the sheeple, it's like this. I had to laugh the other day. Someone was talking about like you could just see the fear was all over their face about this vaccine. And it was like so ironic because I was like, bro, the vaccine, the fear and hesitancy you have for the vaccine is the fear and hesitancy, not so much hesitancy, but the fear people have for COVID. It's the same thing. It's just literally on the other side of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. But it's the same fucking, vibration, if you want to call that. It's the same energy. It's the same resonance.
Yeah, the same reason why you are scared of it is the same reason why people want to get it.
Exactly right. Now, bing, 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 bing. And when people can then both see that, they stop fighting each other, then we become peaceful, and then we start complying with this bullshit. Does it happen overnight? No. It will probably take years. This is the thing. We're currently in World War III, and we've been in World War III since the last day of World War II. This is a spiritual warfare. It's on the people that know how to control the human population, and the only way to actually outgame them is to not play their fucking game. Mm. Isn't that Einstein's quote? I'm pretty sure it's his. And it's like, you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it.
Yep, it is. Yep.
So this is why it's about creating a new reality, not trying to fight the one here, or as Dr. Zach Bush would say, you just create a vacuum. You literally are fighting the very thing you want to actually avoid and overcome. So it's futile, it's stupid. So it's playing a new game. How can I play a new game? How can I show up differently, better, more enlightened, if you really want to call that, and in a greater capacity to serve the planet, not try to fight what's actually currently going on.
I read a book that reminds me of what you said. I've forgotten what it's called. What's it called? Give me a second. I'm going to pull it up.
What's it about?
It is God, Sex, and that's what the title is. Give me a second. It is a great book. Jamie Wheel, Recapture the Rapture. That's what it's called.
Jamie Wheel, Capture the Rapture.
It is wild. It talks about meaning 1.0, meaning 2.0, meaning 3.0, and meaning 1.0 was organized religion, and there was two groups of people. There was the saved and there was the unsaved. It's very simple. Then there was meaning 2.0, which was like liberalism, which was because the saved and unsaved, it's not very inclusive, right? It's like you're either going to fucking heaven or you're going to hell. Sorry, like you either believe.
Division.
Yeah. It's simple though. It's like black and white. And then meaning 2.0, which also failed, is inclusive of everybody. Liberalism, like the American, everybody's inclusive, but that also created a massive division as well. He's talking about creating meaning 3.0, which is like everything we've been talking about, regulating your own nervous system, like taking back control. I think you'd love this book. It would blow your mind. Like it's fucking amazing. But he talks about that these people on the left and right, there's something called the dark triad of personalities. I think it's Machiavellism, narcissism, and there's another thing, I forgot what it is, but basically the people that were like the far right and the people that are the far left, they've done like studies of these people, and they've done surveys and things like that, and both of these people are extremely similar to each other with this dark triad of personality traits. They're both, most of them, extremely narcissistic. Like if you're a person that views the world through a lens of, you have to address me by these 10 different pronouns that I identify with, and if you don't talk to me like that, then I'm going to make your ears bleed. And explain that. That's a very narcissistic way to view the world. And trust me, I've met people who don't identify as a woman or a man or whatever, and like, hey, like I'd prefer next time if you did this, but I get it if you made a mistake because you just don't know. I'm like, cool, fucking cool, thank you. Not like ostracize me because I don't know. So it's very interesting. Like those people, it's like that quote, it's like the people who are the loudest are usually the most convicted, but they're usually the people who are the most insane. Like the people that are the loudest and they're just like screaming and they're making all this noise. And then there's the 99% of people who are just like, well, I just want to like have a good community, want to love my kids, I want to go to work and have my friends. But the problem is,
people just want a simple, loving life.
Yep. And the problem is these days there's a lot of people that are just like very loud, and social media, then there's the algorithms that perpetuate all of that. And they basically curate this this worldview, and that's what's happened in the last 18 to 24 months. Is a lot of people have this curated, delusional worldview that has been created by an algorithm. And what happens is, this guy was talking on this podcast that I was listening to. He's like, he looked up police brutality, right? He just typed in police brutality, and he made the algorithm show him that. And then he sees all the comments on the videos, right? And he's like, well, all these people are seeing that too. So you start seeing this world that every policeman is a monster. Then for a week, he looked up police doing heroic actions and all the comments from that. So he gets this confirmation bias of both perspectives. And he's like, holy shit, man, they were both so real. And the way that he would go out into the world, the way they would look at police, the one week that he was looking at police brutality versus the second week. And this guy's a really smart guy. That was that Daniel Schmachtenberger guy. He was explaining this, and I was like, holy shit. And a lot of us are not even conscious enough to even realize that that's what's happening right now. And
no,
there's no answer. This is like, you and I can sit here and be like, the answer is really like, I think what you said is really like learning who you are and getting to know you, and just being like developing the intuition and kind of coming back to home or love or whatever that means, and really being like, no, this isn't right. That doesn't feel right. And I've been actually feeling that due to a lot of the work I've been doing on myself. I've started going to different men's weekends. I've had some really interesting moments that I probably chatted to you about another time, because we could go all night. But yeah, man, I like kind of wanted to wrap it up here. But is there any final thoughts? Anything you want to share? I mean, what me sharing my truth is actually me starting this podcast. I don't have a massive following right now. I've picked some couple of people who don't listen to this. I think everybody needs to listen to this. Like, seriously, I think everybody.
Do you remember Joe Rogan's first podcast? It's with a fucking potato, and it got like 7 years.
True. And who knows where this will go, but I'm doing it because it's one of the things that makes you feel alive. And and having these conversations, like I might not even sleep tonight. It's like almost 10 p.m. now. I'm like, man, some things that Mitch said. Yeah, like what do you kind of want to wrap it up with? Like what are your final thoughts here?
Look, I live a very blessed life. I'm not going to lie. I've been through a lot of pain, a lot of torture, but coming out the other side of that, I live a very blessed life. And what I will simply say is that every single human being who's breathing right now is going to take their last breath. And that can come as a bit of a shock to people, but yes, we're mortal.
Wait, I'm going to die?
Yeah. And what I would propose or invite people to consider is that no matter what is going on externally, whether we were living through utopia or COVID-19 or another Hiroshima bomb, there are always ways in which you get to choose the reality you want to experience. I have not worn a mask, checked in, signed anything, taken a vaccine, and I have thrived, created more opportunity, more friendship, more community, more money, and more everything in this pandemic. So I'm living proof. Now, I'm also blessed. That's why I wanted to pre-frame that. Yes, I live in Australia, even though that's one of the worst countries in the world right now. Beautiful environments and beautiful people. You know, we're not in like, say, Tehran or some sort of country like, say, North Korea.
Yeah.
Where otherwise, apart from this, we have a lot of opportunity. And it's all too easy to get sucked into the external void and lose yourself in that, which derails you from your grounded presence where you do have governance and you do have choice. And I invite people to consider, do you really want to be subject and victimized to the mercy of governments and criminals? Or do you want to find creative ways to create a new earth because the old one is going? There might have been a time where people might have thought that, oh my God, these from horses and carts, these cars, things are coming in. People are going to die from car. There's always, how many people lost their jobs when typewriters went to computers? There's always going to be gain and loss. There's always going to be good and bad. There's always positive and negative. And when you really embody that, not just know it as a concept, mine is one thing, that's visceral in your fucking DNA, and you know it, and you understand the secret to the universe, which is dance in the chaos. Dance, full stop. Dance between positive, negative. Dance between good and bad. Dance between gain, loss. Just dance and know that it's a dance. And when you realize and really realize that and embody that practice, you'll enjoy life. You'll be grateful. You're not going to be subject to these subjective biases and these one-sided distortions of life, thinking that right now it's all bad. Vaccine passports are bad. Vaccines are bad. This is bad. this is bad, negative, bad, too much. It's time to find balance and equanimity, and that's up to you. If you start breathing and you start grounding yourself and you're more connected to your heart, mind, and body, your spirit gets to thrive. And I've come really, really close to death several times. And let me tell you, death is super easy, super easy. But you do not want to go to your bed, your last breath, and that you could have done more, you could have chosen more, you could have done this, you could have done that. And I could die tomorrow. I'd be pissed, but I could die tomorrow because I know I'm living freely. Once you're free, you're free. Once you're unplugged from the Matrix, you're unplugged. There's just work. There's the real work to be done once you're unplugged. Just like Neo. Rewatch The Matrix, the best fucking documentary you'll ever watch in your life. They were so ahead of their time, and there are so many real life metaphors and extractions that you take for reality here. So if you're someone questioning reality, you're questioning what's going on, or you're stuck in just a world of fear, breathe, come back to center, and know you always have a choice. You're never a victim.
Amazing words, dude. Thank you for your time. I'm going to listen to this. I don't listen to this a lot. I'm excited for this. I'm excited for people to listen to this. I'm excited for some of my friends to listen to this. I'm excited to share this with all the people that I know. And yeah, man, it makes me feel very fulfilled to be able to share this space with you and share this time with you. And I want to do this for a long time. You're a busy guy. You got shit going on. You probably got a lot of people that want to do this with you. And
I love it, bro.
Yeah, I love it too. It fulfills me. It makes me feel happy. And I'm just like, these are the conversations a lot of people maybe wish they could have, but all the things that are stopping them and holding them back, they're not in touch with their emotions, especially as men. We didn't even talk about that much today about what it means to be a man in this world and things like that. Maybe another time, maybe an episode 2. That is worth exploring.
I'm going through a big process with that right now, so it's definitely alive for me. So maybe number 2, yeah.
Yeah, man. But thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Much love to you. Really appreciate it, dude. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for your space. Thank you for your space.